Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I am Tina. Today I'm doing a book review of Last Exit by Max Gladstone. This is a sci-fi fantasy from 2022 from Tor. I read this book as part of the Interstellar Book Club's pick for July. I would show the book here, but I had to take it back to the library. That thing was a beast. It was huge, and these tiny little words. In truth, I thought it should have been 2 books, but I will get into that. So, a sprawling, Dark Tower-inspired multiverse novel that is at its core about friendship, Last Exit is ambitious in scope, but did it meet its goals? What is it about? 10 years ago, Zelda led a band of merry adventurers whose knacks let them travel to alternate realities and battle the black rot that threatened to unmake each world. Zelda was the warrior. Ish could locate people anywhere. Ramon always knew what path to take. Sarah could turn catastrophe aside, keeping them all connected. Sal, Zelda's lover, and the group's heart. Until their final failed mission, when Sal was lost, when all things fell apart. 10 years on, Ish, Ramon, and Sarah are happy and successful. Zelda is alone, always traveling, destroying rot throughout the U.S. When it boils through the crack in the Liberty Bell, the rot gives Zelda proof that Sal is alive, trapped somewhere in the Alts. Zelda's getting the band back together, plus Sal's younger cousin June, who has a knack none of them had ever seen before. As relationships rekindle, the friends begin to believe they can find Sal and heal all the worlds. It's not going to be easy, but they faced worse before. But things have changed, out there in the Alts, and in everyone's hearts. What's funny about this book is that it sounds like something I should have been absolutely obsessed with. We have numerous post-apocalyptic worlds, characters in their 30s, fun sci-fi fantasy with horror elements, and lots of diversity. Yet, something about it kept me at a distance. In truth, I found it a little tedious. The writing style was lovely, but I found myself zoning out a lot and having trouble maintaining an interest in the plot. There's a place they're trying to get to in the story. It's not really a spoiler. I just wasn't clear why they had to stay in the Alts to do that. Why not just fly a plane in the real world to the wheel and then jump into the new world then? I also wasn't sure how they were supposed to stop the rot or what it was supposed to represent thematically or symbolically, as the book seemed to be saying a lot of valid critiques of our world, but I wasn't sure how these tied into the fantasy world element. Normally when people do that, the fantasy element kind of reflects that somehow, either with the creature they're fighting or something like that. It didn't seem like there was a lot of connection between the points he was making in the real world and then kind of what was happening in the fantasy. In truth, I found the plot a bit loose and the world building too flimsy for my liking. I'm still not sure how or why they're able to move through realities, how they developed knacks and why they worked in all the worlds, and how they were able to map these roads or find the wheel. This is also why I think 2 books might have worked better for me. We could have learned with the characters how these things functioned in the first book rather than be told them, partway through the main book. Another aspect that kept me from loving it was that the characters were so serious all the time. I wish we'd seen them more in their youth, as it would have been more interesting to me to see them when they were bright-eyed and ready to meet the world's challenges, and then witness what, 10 years did to them in terms of mindset and perspective. Instead, we're given brief flashbacks to each character in college, and then one part chapter about their current life. Instead of their history together feeling like memories, they felt like info dumps. And rather than a decadent swirl, they were just kind of plopped in there, like someone had made a marble cake and forgotten to run a knife through the chocolate batter. I like making cakes. I would have much preferred banter to them essentially only talking about serious subjects. There is a little bit of banter, but not enough to kind of give the group a fun dynamic compared to feeling like a bunch of coworkers on a group retreat who don't want to be there, because that was kind of the vibe I was getting. Being a huge fan of Wastelands, I was also a bit disappointed that they'd mentioned what sounded like an exciting or really cool reality, but only in passing. I was like, we don't get to see it? I did find it interesting that all the realities were absolute shit, that they never found a place better than our Earth. I did also really love the scene in the hotel with the cowboy. That was very evocative and exciting chapter, and I thought the cowboy in general was a fun antagonist, albeit far too much like a Randall Flagg copy without the charisma. Which brings me to something that I found a bit too heavy-handed, and that was the Dark Tower references. It was too much at times for me. The Dark Tower isn't that old, so doing a modernization of it feels less like an homage to a classic than a fanfiction? I don't know, maybe that's not fair. Please tell me if that's unfair. I mean, there's nothing wrong with fanfiction. I wasn't intending this review to be all critique, but looking at my point form notes, I'm struggling now to find things that I really loved about it. The diversity was great, the action scenes were snappy, and the prose was nice, just a bit too verbose at times. But I guess it just didn't work for me. And that's okay. So, here we go.